Before this video starts, if you enjoy this video, there are many more like it on the channel, with many more like it to come in the future, so please subscribe. I am trying to hit 100,000 subs by the end of the year, so if you could subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Also, I would appreciate it if you dropped a like on this video. It helps the video do better in YouTube's algorithm. With that said, today we are going to be talking about the Minnesota Timberwolves and whether or not, with the trade deadline they just had, if they could make the playoffs or not. The Timberwolves just had a great trade deadline. They landed DAngelo Russell in exchange for Andrew Wiggins and a first-round pick, as well as Malik Beasley in a three-team deal where they sent Robert Covington to the Rockets, and they got Beasley from the Nuggets, as well as Juan Hernangomez from the Nuggets. DAngelo Russell is one of the better young stars in the league, and Beasley was begging to be unleashed from the grasp of the Denver Nuggets. They were not giving him enough minutes. They were not giving him enough opportunity within the offense, so going to a new team that would utilize him properly was exactly what he was looking for, and since then he has been doing that. Since being traded from Denver, he has averaged 21 points, shooting 43% from downtown on 8.2 attempts per game, with an overall 59% true shooting percentage. He's been hitting his threes, playing well in transition, and even creating off of the dribble a little bit. His shooting from three has been a lot of them like off of the move, like with a awkward angle. He's basically been one of the best shooters in the NBA since he's been traded to Minnesota. However, this has been only 14 games, so you can take it with somewhat of a grain of salt, but he had shown the signs of having this level of shooting potential prior, so I do think this is going to hold up. It's really just a matter of if he can maintain what he's doing and if the Wolves re-sign him. I imagine that he's going to be re-signed by Minnesota because they have his rights and because they should want to re-sign him. With his age and him breaking out like this in this weak free agency class, normally I think he'd get around $20 million a year, maybe even more depending on if a team was desperate or not. But this actually now depends on how much this pandemic affects the salary cap. We'll have to see with that. For DAngelo Russell, he's played a little bit worse than normal since being traded to Minnesota, but I do think he's going to be fine. He's a type of player who has a tendency to be streaky because of his shot selection, so it was really just a matter of the shots not hitting when he was in Minnesota. Russell is a good scorer, not a great one, because of his bad finishing at the basket and the fact that he never draws fouls, only 4 a game, and his over-reliance on the mid-range shot. He just is not going to be a great scorer. Really, if he could add good finishing and drawing fouls, he would be like really the only thing that separates him and James Harden is drawing fouls and going to the basket, but those are obviously huge things. But he's a good scorer, he is a lethal three-point shooter, especially off of the dribble, and he is also a great playmaker, which is something that Towns has been looking to be the beneficiary of for a long while now. He pretty much had Ricky Rubio in his first 2 seasons in the league, but ever since then, he has not really had a great playmaker to play alongside him. Towns, of course, is the biggest part of this because he's the best player on the team. He was having a career year before he got hurt. Cat this year has shot 8 threes a game on over 40% shooting as a center, while averaging 26 and 11 and improving his defense on top of that. Towns, I feel, is one of the most disrespected star players in the NBA. I'm actually probably going to make a video on him specifically and why he is underrated, because offensively, there are only 5 players that I would say for certain I am taking over KarlAnthony Towns. There are others that have a case, but Cat as an offensive player is A tier, and even though he's an average to below average defensive player, he needs to get more credit than he's given. I saw a top 10 players under 25 list, and Ben Simmons was above him on that list, and I find that to be absolutely ludicrous. But these 3 combined, Cat, Beasley, and D'Lo, are all players that shoot around 8 to 9 threes a game. There are only 14 players in the league who shoot that many threes a game, and only 2 of them are on the same team with Harden and Eric Gordon. The Wolves have 3 of them, and all 3 of them can realistically shoot that many threes while shooting 38+% from there. These 3 as a foundation can make for possibly the best three-point shooting team in the NBA. It depends what personnel the Warriors sign, because I don't think Curry and Klay alone could quite outdo this team just because you have 3 guys shooting 9 threes a game. That is 26 three-point attempts combined from just 3 players, which is nearly as many as a few entire teams' three-point rates. The Indiana Pacers only shoot 27 threes a game with a whole team. They also have Cat and D'Lo, who can get their own buckets, with D'Lo also being a great playmaker. But what about the other players on this roster? Well, Juan Hernangomez, who they also got back in their deal with Denver, has also played fantastic in his 14 games with Minnesota. He shot 42% from 3 on 5 attempts, averaging 13 points and 7 rebounds. James Johnson has also played really well, averaging 12, 4, and 4 on good shooting splits, while of course playing his signature good defense. That playmaking out of the forward spot, it will be definitely useful on this team. That's a little lacking in playmaking outside of D'Lo. Josh Okogie is a great defensive player. Unfortunately, he still cannot hit a 3 to save his life, but he is still an overall positive and a good athlete in the fast break. And Jarrett Culver, I feel, really is the make-it-break-it player for this team making the playoffs. He had a rough rookie season. He's good defensively, but inconsistent as hell everywhere else. But if he can make a turnaround and he can hit his threes, attack closeouts, keep up that defense, and maybe be a secondary playmaker to D'Lo, maybe third in the pecking order because Cat is such a good playmaker, he would be very valuable. If not, there's a chance that you could trade him for more established pieces. Not like they really need more young guys. His potential is not so high that you feel bad about trading him for established guys, but they also have Allen Crabbe, who could maybe be a shooter off of the bench. He shot like shit all of this season, but the year prior, he shot 6 threes a game on 38% shooting, shot the same percentage on 7 attempts the previous season. He could be a bench shooter, maybe get you 3 threes a game. Other than that, they can sign some guys, and they could especially use some defensive guys. I'd recommend, as I probably will for every team, that they sign Jeremy Grant, who can play power forward or small forward, hit threes, and play amazing defense. Again, the pandemic is going to affect salary cap, but they do also have to bring back Beasley, so I don't know how much cap space they are going to have. They could also go for Mo Harkless, whose value is not that high right now, so you could probably get him for $5 to $6 million a year, I would guess. He is a really good defensive player, and he's not a completely horrible three-point shooter. He can definitely hit his open ones. They could also just bring back James Johnson, who's been really good for them. If they had a lineup of D'Lo, Malik Beasley, Jeremy Grant, Mo Harkless, and KarlAnthony Towns with some defense off of the bench, I think they could definitely make the playoffs. Also, ideally, some offense off of the bench as well. I don't think it's enough defense to quite get there, especially with the Pelicans, Blazers, and maybe even the Suns being in the race next year. So if I had to bet, I would say they don't make it, just because the Western Conference is just simply ridiculous. Assuming the Timberwolves hold up, this means there's going to be like 12 teams in playoff contention in the West next year. But they have the foundation to be a top 5 offense. That much shooting with possibly 20 plus points a game from 3 different players. As long as Ryan Saunders does not fuck this up and runs plays that best utilize the shooting of this team, I think they should be one of the best offenses in the league. A DAngelo, KarlAnthony Towns pick and roll or pick and pop with Beasley moving off screens off ball. That is an offense that's going to be hard to guard, especially with someone like Juan Hernangomez out there spotting up from 3, or Allen Crabbe and other guys like that. I can definitely see them making the 8th seed. I just would not put money on it simply because they do not have that kind of defense. If they make some defensive signings, and with that they are able to be, let's say, the 18th best defense while being a top 5 offense, I would bet on them being a playoff team. But with Beasley and D'Lo both being bad defenders, Towns being just a passable one, there really is not enough defense here for me to justify saying they will be a playoff team, but they certainly have the foundation to get there, especially if they have a good offseason. They also have a draft pick that I haven't even mentioned. I would probably recommend trading that if you can get something good for it, unless you get a top pick, in which case draft somebody, or even then, I still think these three as a foundation is good enough to not be all that concerned about getting a top prospect right now. So with these guys, I would make a push for the playoffs, commit all the way to winning, because KarlAnthony Towns is only so patient. Eventually, I think by the time he's on probably his last year of his contract, he would ask for a trade. So getting his best friend and D'Lo on the team definitely helps. Getting Beasley, who should make them another great piece for their offense. All of that, I think you can make a playoff push, and I think they should fully commit to that. I think they were kind of committing to that, being that they traded their own first-round pick to the Warriors, which is definitely a risky move. So if the Timberwolves commit all the way to being a playoff team, I definitely see them being in that race and possibly even making it, especially if Towns takes another step as he's continued to do every year of his career. But that's the Timberwolves. That's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.